Welcome to this week's episodes of Insight. During this week's show, we're going to be covering multiple smaller topics rather than our usual one or two large ones that we focus on. The first topic we're going to be talking about is the issue of Armenian POWs that are still being held in the dungeons of Baku. This is an issue that none of us speak enough about, and it's time for us to bring it up and talk about it. From what we know, there are somewhere between 30, 31 to over 100 Armenian POWs and possibly some civilians that are still being held in the prisons in Baku. Obviously, there's absolutely no justification for any of these people to be held, since based on the ceasefire agreement of November 9th, they should have all been returned to Armenia a long time ago. And essentially what they are at this point, they're really not POWs, they're POWs plus, they're POWs and hostages, and they're hostages to be traded by the Aliyev regime to win kudos from different countries, whether there's negotiations in Moscow, whether there's negotiations in Belgium or in Washington. They'll release 5 persons here, 10 persons there, and they deserve credit, and they get credit for it when they absolutely deserve no credit for it. This has also been one of the big failures of the current government, despite the fact that you're obviously dealing with a criminal regime in Baku, which any Armenian government would be dealing with, but they've obviously been ineffective in getting these people home, which they should have been home a long time ago. Recently, last week, the person who made a mention of this issue was the US Secretary of State Tony Blinken, who in a conversation with the dictator in Baku brought up this topic, and it was actually brought up in his communique. Now, what's interesting here is the US side actually brought this up in their communique, while the EU in their conversations never mentions this topic, and I think that's quite a failure of the foreign policy of this government. We're going to move on to the second topic of the day, which is the rallies that are going on in Yerevan. I have some comments about that in general. We sort of have a continuation of what we've had for the last 2 weeks. Rallies, which are held in the center of Yerevan, have a few hundred people in the mornings and a few thousand people at night. And it's been going on pretty much at the same pace, basically on the same message. If you're going to really sum up any feedback from these rallies, it is that you have a very popular cause that's led by unpopular people in opposition, which can't take advantage of this issue. One thing that I want to reflect on, which for those of us who've lived in the West, I think will understand more clearly, here you have the central arteries of the capital of Armenia that have been blocked for almost 2.5 to 3 weeks. And no one has done anything about it. If this would happen in Washington, London, or Paris, anybody who was blocking the main arteries of the city would be cleared out in a matter of minutes. And I'm not saying this to credit the current government, because I think that it's not about them. We had similar rallies before the revolution, and they were tolerated, and people blocked primary streets like Bahramian Street during Electric Yerevan. I think this is a credit to the freedom culture that we have in this country, and a reflection that this country is, again, an island of freedom in a sea of tyranny. I think people have a tendency in this country to take credit for things that we really aren't very good at or aren't that important. And we tend to overlook the things that we should really be proud of. And this is one of those things that we should be really proud of, because no matter the inconvenience that it caused, no matter what you think of the cause, you're for or against it, the ability of people to express themselves is something that's quite unique, and it's something that we should be very proud of. We're going to move on to the third topic of the day, which is the appreciation of the Armenian currency, the dram, against the dollar. And the dram has gained about 10% against the dollar, which is actually quite surprising, because after the start of the war in Ukraine, people expected the opposite, and we've actually had a development that is quite unique, because in most of the world, actually the dollar is strengthening against currencies all around the world. It's very hard to know exactly what this is driven by, but most likely the cause of this is the move of over 100,000 Russians into Armenia, and many of these people actually have clients in the West and are getting essentially the dollars that used to be transferred to Moscow or wherever they lived in Russia into Armenia, which is obviously impacting the exchange rate. Obviously, this has positive and negative features. On the positive side, it obviously helps our balance of trade. It actually makes our imports cheaper and helps fight inflation, but on the negative ledger, it has the effect of making our exports more expensive and less competitive worldwide. Now we're going to move on to our last topic of the day, which is the smoking ban that actually took effect in Armenia on March 15th. I've been wanting to talk about this topic for a while, but it's been overwhelmed by more important issues. It's actually quite a unique development. On March 15th, all smoking indoor and outdoor in restaurants and coffee shops were banned in Armenia. And for those of you who live in Armenia or visit, traditionally Armenian restaurants and coffee shops have two sections. One of them is for smoking and the other one is for chain smoking. So this is actually quite a revolutionary change. And what is most surprising is that this has actually worked. People are actually following the rules and there's absolutely no smoking going on except at the edges of the restaurant. And smokers, as they do in the West, people walk out and smoke. As a lifelong smoker myself, I was expecting and hoping for some sort of a Gandhian nonviolent response, resistance to these efforts, but that has not come to fore. And who knows, we might actually be turning into a law-abiding society. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Insights.
I smoke 2 joints in the morning, I smoke 2 joints at night. I smoke 2 joints in the afternoon, it makes me feel alright. Smoke 2 joints in time of peace, into a time of war. Smoke 2 joints before I smoke 2 joints, then I smoke 2 more.